Krista is an independent curator and an online gallery owner based in Brooklyn. She earned her BA in art history and Spanish from the University of Pennsylvania and her MA from New York University's XE Experimental Humanities and Social Engagement program. Senna has worked for the ICA Philadelphia, the Queens Museum, and the New Museum in various capacities. Past exhibitions include collaborations with Brick, Nurture Art, and Leslie Heller Workspace, and site-specific exhibitions in alternative forums such as the Old Stone House, Dumbo Arts Festival, Spring Break Art Show, and the Cigar Factory. Krista also connects local emerging artists with new art buyers as the co-founder and owner of the Ground Floor Gallery based in Park Slope, Brooklyn. From 2013 to 2020. The gallery continues to operate as a virtual platform specializing in commissions and art consulting for new art buyers. Welcome, Krista.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Claudia. All right, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. It was so great to listen to Zach's presentation as well. He jogged so many memories of visiting him at some of those residencies and keeping up with his work. He really is one to watch, really fascinating artist and person. So thank you, Zach, for kicking that off so well in great style. So my name is Krista Senna, pronounced Senna. As you heard, I'm an independent curator. I have been curating since 2008 when I actually curated my very first exhibition in a friend's apartment in Manhattan, believe it or not, and just evolved from there. Later on in 2013, I co-founded Ground Floor Gallery with my friend and business partner, fellow independent curator Jill Benson. And we ran that lovely, lively space from 2013 to 2020, focusing mostly on local emerging artists. So that was a great 7-year run. And then we had to close it, unfortunately, with everything going on. But still, working with emerging and mid-career artists online, advocating for them, connecting them to broader audiences, new collectors, as you heard, doing more online sales and art consulting, and also commissions, which still speaks to my curatorial work as well, because commissions and site-specific curatorial work share that element of customization and really targeting your work to an audience or a person or a space. I'm also a strategist with 9th Street Collective, and they also do one-on-one professional developments for artists. I consider them a kindred spirit of CODA. And as Zach mentioned in his presentation, these type of professional development forums and platforms are so necessary. There can never be too many of these workshops and events. I know that they are very helpful, and I really enjoy sharing and hopefully steering some of you guys in the right direction. I also want to thank, let me not continue without thanking CODA and Residency Unlimited for having me here. It's been a pleasure working with you all. So I thought I would start with a few slides from the physical space of Ground Floor Gallery. And I'll just explain to you briefly how each artist represented here connected with the gallery, so you can see some real life examples. So this was a solo show by the artist I. Campbell. And I had been in quite a few group exhibitions that we had at the gallery. And then we decided to offer her a solo show after a number of those and really getting to know her. She was a local artist near us, a very active member of the Gowanus artist community, which was really essential actually to the success and the evolution of our gallery, having that really rich, robust artist network right next door. This is a group exhibition, String Theory, from 2018 or 2019 in the space. And this was a group exhibition of about 5 or 6 local Brooklyn-based emerging artists, many of whom also hailed from the Gowanus neighborhood near our gallery. They would often come by, go to openings, check in, say hi. You know, we just formed relationships with a lot of these artists as friends. And then eventually they would show their work, they would apply for an open call, or we would invite them to a group exhibition. A lot of the time, these things just happen from getting yourself out there and connecting. All right, and then the last image is a solo show from our 5th anniversary exhibition, where we actually granted 5 artists' solo shows. We called it In 5 Acts to celebrate our 5-year exhibition in 2018. And this is Ryan Sarah Murphy, actually based in Manhattan in East Harlem. And we had met her years before when she submitted work, a very small but very compelling piece for our Male Art Biennial. Every couple years, we would have a massive, really fun Male Art Biennial, which was a really great, inclusive, and accessible way for us to meet new artists and also show work from all over the city, all over the country, all over the world. It was a treat. So imagine, she first introduced herself to the gallery with this small postcard sized work. And then years later, we would feature her in her own show of much larger, more dynamic pieces. So you just never know where these connections can lead. So I thought we would talk about being a mid-career artist, because as many of you know and experience, it really is a unique position. You're not just starting out, but you're also not considered established. You're in between. So let's kind of go through what might be considered challenges from being a mid-career artist and how we can shape that and turn that around and leverage a lot of these as strengths to take your career, your art career, to the next step. So, it could be considered a con that you're not a new player in the art world, right? We all know the art world covets a lot of the time the new and the young and the youthful, the shiny new object. That might not be the case right now, and that's okay. We're going to get back to that. Maybe you're feeling a loss of momentum. I've heard this a lot from mid-career artists, kind of, what now? How do I refresh myself? My contacts are feeling a bit stale. Sometimes there are experiences with ageism, because we're getting a little older, or with sexism mostly directed towards women in the art world. These are realities that we have to confront and surpass. There's also the reality for many of us of starting a family or raising a family. And of course, that requires childcare to then devote time to yourself and to your art career. And those time constraints can be really stressful. So we notice here that the pros are actually very similar. I thought of this line. This is from the rap group Gang Starr, one of their songs from the early 90s. And one of the lines that, has endured throughout pop culture is, "I'm not new to this, I'm true to this." And it really turns a negative into a positive. You're not new to this, you're not the new kid on the block, and that's a good thing. You have a foundation, you have knowledge, skills to share, and you just want to build on that foundation and be recognized for who you are now. You're also more street smart, right? We know the art world can be iffy and strange and awkward, and it does help to know how to navigate those waters a little bit better now as a mid-career artist versus an emerging artist, or maybe if you were just graduating from art school and were thrown into the professional arena from the academic arena. We all know that can be a shock to the system. You have a developed body of work, and many of you also have a track record of sales. These don't have to be big sales. They don't have to be a lot of sales. It's just the idea that maybe you've sold 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 pieces. Again, it doesn't have to be a lot. Well, you have an idea of what appeals to buyers, what sells easily, what doesn't sell, and also pricing. It can be really tricky to price your work. And so that track record will really help you think about pricing for new work as well, and this mid-career status where you're at. All right, so what do we need to do? We need to reconnect and we need to regroup. But this is the most important point. If you take anything else from today, it's that you cannot do it by yourself. You cannot work in isolation. You cannot make an impact in isolation. I like to say that you make your work, by yourself as an artist, oftentimes in the studio, but then you make your career outside of the studio. Why? Because you have to think of the art world as an ongoing dialogue. You can engage with it as often as you want to or you need to, and there are actually different ways that you can engage with it that fit your lifestyle, who you are, and what your other life obligations are at this point. The main takeaway is you need to join that dialogue, you need to join that conversation, participate, and I'm going to use a word a lot of people don't like, which is networking, all right? And networking doesn't have to be being in a big room at a cocktail party and not knowing anyone and trying to connect and trying to show them your work. No, There are so many different nuanced ways that you can and should network. And we're going to go through that right now. What I've done is I've isolated some of the key communities that I think you should definitely be a part of. And we'll also talk about how you can participate in each of these communities to take it to the next level. All right, so the number one most important community, you actually heard Zachary underscore this in his presentation as well, are your artist peers, your artist network. Oftentimes when I've spoken to artists in the past, they can become fixated, which makes sense given all the messaging you're receiving, but it's easy to become fixated in forming a relationship with this one big gallery or this one gallery that you've coveted over the years, or trying to meet that one curator, or trying to get on the radar of that critic or that arts writer. Those are all important people to meet, and you will connect with them and meet them in time. But the first community and the first VIPs that you need to connect with are your fellow artists. Why? They are an invaluable resource for you, right? Artists, look at this panel. I'm the only non-artist on the panel. Zach, Lydia, and Antonia are all accomplished artists in their own right that are also here sharing other expertise related to their practice, but are here as specialists. And that really speaks to how active and engaged they've been in the art world to gain that specialty. So I thought of some examples here of different artists that I've worked with or I'm working with now who wear many different hats and occupy many different orbits in the art world. And these are orbits and people that can help influence you and help elevate your career. I'm not pointing out, Chris and Carl and these different artists here to say, go contact them. These are just examples of the different roles that artists play throughout the art world and the impact that they have, right? Chris right now has a show up at Spring Break in LA. He also writes for Art Forum. Carl founded Algira, which is a contemporary art space in Newark. He's also an artist and a curator in his own right. Ortega Gasset is an excellent artist-run gallery in Gowanus, which is near where we were, Ground Floor Gallery. Tiger Strikes Asteroid has several locations, and their founder is also an artist, Alex Take, who recently relocated to California. Cheryl Riley is an artist and an art advisor, and Joanne McFarland and Barbara Marks are both artists that serve on boards. Barbara's on the board of a very well-regarded artist residency, and Joanne just joined the board of Arts Gowanus, of which I was a part for many years. And that organization advocates for sustainability and the creative community and the artist community to be able to stay in Gowanus, despite all the development and gentrification, everything you've heard about. All right, so how do we build this artist network? Zach actually alluded to a lot of these points earlier. Support each other's events. Reciprocity is key, right? You remember when someone comes out to your event, to your opening, and you will be more inclined when you can make that space and that time for them to go support one of their events. You need to be visiting studios. It could be just a one-on-one visit, right? It doesn't have to be an open studio event. It doesn't have to have a goal or agenda beyond just talking with a peer, hearing about their work and their ideas, and you doing the same. Art classes. Art school, of course, we know provides a really strong network, but you can also gain a lot of valuable support and a community from clubs like the New York City Crit Club and also the Art Student League, right, which has been around for 50 or 60 years. They have exhibitions, the Art Students League. They participate in the Affordable Art Fair. So it doesn't have to be a full-time experience. The idea is that you're going out there, you're going where the artists are, where your peers are, where your support system is. Volunteer work, of course, we know artists are also working in galleries throughout the city, museums, art handling, you name it, artists are there, and also online on social media. I'll continue to talk about this. I do love social media. I use it a lot, so I am definitely biased, but I've also been impacted by social media in such positive ways. And it's been so supportive to me and my art career from when I first got started independent curating years ago. And I've been able to meet a large part of my community and support system through this as well. All right, so when I was preparing for this presentation, I actually tapped into my artist network and I spoke to a few mid-career artists that I had a strong relationship or have a strong relationship with at the gallery and asked them to share about their journeys. I spoke to these particular artists as well because at least two of them had taken a break from the art world for personal reasons or professional reasons, and then came back to it in their own way, in their own style, and are now thriving. And, it wasn't a missed opportunity. They just had to take a break, take a hiatus. They regrouped, and then they just came back full throttle. And they're really seeing the fruits of their labor now after years of making work, thinking about their style, but also putting the time in to build community. So here's a quote from Mia Yim. We can actually take a moment here. Just wanted to share with you her website here. Here's Mia in her studio. These big, bold, colorful, abstracted figures are her specialty. She also does these really small, petite, sweet food drawings. All right, just so you get a sense. Visuals are always appreciated, right, and helpful. She used to come to openings. She was very friendly. She never came with an ask or an agenda, just really wanted to support her friends that were showing with us. We visited her studio. She was in group shows. And then we offered her a solo show, at the gallery in 2019. And little did we know at that time, until she told me, that was her first solo show in about 8 to 10 years. It had been a long time. So she was really grateful. We were honored to have that opportunity to reintroduce her in a formal way to the art world and the Brooklyn art community. And here was her response when I asked her to share. And I think a lot of you will benefit from this and appreciate this voice. First, I worked in my studio for 10 to 15 years without stressing about what my art meant, where my market is. I needed the luxury of time to develop the painting language. I told myself this is not a short gain, but a long marathon. And then when I felt ready, I committed myself to fully engage in the community. That involved going to openings, doing studio visits, seeing shows. I missed a lot of family dinners, but I thought of it as my job. Slowly, I developed relationships and started to be included in group shows, eventually having a solo show at Ground Floor Gallery. From then on, it's been an upward ascension, with many opportunities coming my way, including a museum solo show scheduled later this year. All right, another crucial community is the gallery community. I'm often asked as a gallery owner, how do you meet artists? How do you meet new artists? How do you select artists for exhibitions or opportunities? The number one answer, which relates to my earlier point, my first point, is that it's from other artists. Sometimes it's a recommendation that's more formal. We used to have an anniversary show at the gallery every year where we would ask artists that showed in the past season to recommend 3 or 4 peers that they think we should show in the next season. And we would curate a group exhibition of about 8 to 10 artists based on those prior artists' recommendations. Other times I've met artists more informally. An artist would come to an opening and bring a friend and just introduce that friend. Oh, by the way, this is an artist that I think you should know, or is just a nice person. And I would just meet an artist that way, and maybe we would share information on social media, right? That's another advantage of social media. I just start to look at their Instagram or their Twitter account just to get a sense of what their work is like. And it was not awkward for them, and there was no pressure for me, because it was just like a natural, relaxed, organic introduction and moment. But you never know what can come out of that. Also, open studios. I love visiting artist studios. I love being invited to see an artist studio. It's one of my favorite ways to experience art, because you have the artist right there with you, talking to you live and direct about their ideas and their thoughts and concerns. and it's an exchange, and you're also giving them feedback, which they find very helpful. And it's not scary, and it's not awkward, and it's not an opening, right? It's very intimate, and it's very enriching. It also just helps me meet a lot of artists. You know, I do get around, of course, before COVID more, and it will come back, but I do really save the dates in my calendar for open studio events. And I make it a point to be in town, go to those studios, meet as many artists as I can. I just went out to Wave Hill, up in the Bronx and Riverdale, to see a handful of artists, some of which I knew, some of whom I knew and wanted to reconnect with. Others I met when I was there. But it was a great opportunity to meet artists in a really relaxed, but beautiful and professional setting. And I also got to reconnect with the curators at Wave Hill, who I hadn't seen in months, if not years. That's another thing that we will get back to in a little while, is the benefit of going to a more intimate event, an artist talk, a book signing, a small open studio. Those are other ways you can network, and you can often have a curator or gallery owner's ear because the setting is more relaxed, and it's more relaxed for everyone. And so that allows for more exchange and often more accessibility. I'm also asked to be on juries for open calls. So, you know, get out there and apply to open calls. You never know who's looking at the work behind the scenes. And another benefit of that is oftentimes your work may not be chosen for that particular open call opportunity. But I have definitely worked with artists who I've learned about from an open call. And maybe they didn't get that particular prize or that particular show, but it's someone I wanted to keep up with, and I was very grateful to have learned about their work, and then I would reach out to them later. I also meet artists, honestly, just because I'm very out and about. Now I have 2 small boys, so it's not as easy for me to be as out and about as I was in my younger years. And of course, again, COVID has changed that, but we know that's coming back little by little. Being part of the dialogue, being part of the conversation in a visual art framework is being visible, right? This is visual art. It's art that we see and we experience. So when you put yourself out there, your work and yourself out there, people like me are looking for that. All right, galleries. I wanted to spend some time debunking the big gallery monster, or the big gallery beast, the prospect. Galleries, there are for-profit galleries, and they're all different. There are over 300 galleries in this city, and there are also for-profit galleries. And neither is better or worse. They can be they are, not can be, they are very supportive spaces of artists. Of course, there are some that may not be run that well. That happens, that's in any arena. But overall, galleries work really, really hard, nonprofit and for-profit, to support artists, to make connections, help you with sales, help you with prices. And when you find the right fit in terms of a gallery or more than one gallery, that can be very rewarding for all involved. I want to underscore that when you're thinking about building a relationship with a gallery, don't focus so much on representation, right? At least not right now. That really can be a goal later on. When you want to build a relationship and learn more about galleries and the gallery landscape, there's no shortcut. There's no one answer. You really have to do your homework and research the different gallery zones or different neighborhoods where you happen to be. Here in New York City, you know, we have galleries throughout Brooklyn. They are typically more accessible. Also, galleries on the Lower East Side are often kind of like the next rung, I would say, in accessibility. You can often be an emerging or mid-career artist in a group show or a solo show in a Lower East Side gallery as well. And then, of course, everyone knows about Chelsea, typically for more established artists, but there are many Chelsea galleries that will also include, I should say, mid-career and emerging artists in group shows. And I see more and more solo exhibitions of artists that I've worked with at the gallery in the Chelsea arena. It doesn't happen overnight. It's all about relationship building, but you want to start with a realistic framework, doing your homework, getting the lay of the land, following the artists that they represent or that they show, thinking about how your work relates or doesn't relate to those artists and that gallery. What's their voice? What's your voice? Anytime you have a friend that's showing at a gallery or curating a show at the gallery, go support. That is a golden ticket in a way. You know someone that's involved. If you have peers that are showing at galleries, by all means, please make the sacrifice. You might not be in the mood, might be a little awkward, but that's okay. When you know someone at the event or know someone at the opening at a gallery, definitely go. Usually it's a lot less nerve-wracking or annoying once you're there and you start to see other friends and peers, and it definitely makes it more enjoyable. And as I talked about here, I'm looking at my slide, the Wave Hill experience. I just want to reiterate, with networking, there can be other less intimidating opportunities like what I just mentioned at Wave Hill, but also galleries, for-profit and nonprofit, have opportunities to connect with artists, curators, and gallery owners at book signings, right? There's often artist talks, poetry readings. Those are great events for those of you out there that either want something a little bit different, maybe a little more enriching than an opening, or don't really feel comfortable going to openings. We can all relate to that. Those are great underestimated opportunities to network and connect in a comfortable setting. All right, so I group these different communities together. You can kind of pick and choose what works for you, but I'll just do a little summary of some of them. I feel like we already covered open studios, but I would say if you're an artist that can rent a studio, you definitely want to rent a studio in a studio community if you can. It really helps with your support system along with the social benefits, the career benefits. Again, just to feel like you're not alone is really powerful. I've also known of artists that may not rent a studio space for a number of reasons, but will rent it or sublet it from an artist friend who may not be using it during the whole open studio weekend. That's often a win-win. That's such a smart solution. Oftentimes these open studio weekends are like 3 to 5 days long and you're supposed to be in the studio. One great solution that a few clever artists I've spoken to have done is kind of split that time. All right, so you can visit one artist the first 2 days or a certain amount of hours and the other artists at different times. Residencies, I will definitely steer you to Zach's presentation, excellent presentation that he just gave here. Not my forte, but I will say on the other end of the residency spectrum, I have often been invited to visit residencies as a visiting curator or a visiting critic. And one of the most recent developments was meeting Carolina Paz, who is a Brazilian-born artist that's now based in Brooklyn. I actually met her at Residency Unlimited, which partnered with Coda on this event. And then she was the artist I featured in a solo exhibition that I curated for spring break in 2018, about a year and a half after I met her at the Residency Unlimited space. So she was one of 5 artists that I met, and I followed all of them, but I kept up the most with her, and then we were able to work together, and it was a really fantastic experience and partnership, and we still keep in touch. Open calls are very important. If you're not trolling NYFA, I think you need to start. That's where the opportunities, they actually have a separate opportunities tab, and that's where you can learn about different open calls. What is an open call? I think most of you know this, but just in case you don't, it is a announcement to submit your work to an exhibition that typically is being organized by a gallery or a nonprofit space or a museum, and they're just looking to get in a lot of work and review it, and oftentimes they'll tease out a theme for that work, or you're submitting work in response to a theme. It's very democratic, it's very inclusive, it's your work speaking for itself. So much goodwill and community is created from these open calls because it's usually a big group show, a lot of people coming together. There's a lot of publicity that the artists do amongst their communities, also the publicity of the space. And it's often a really special, very energetic moment and exhibition that you should leverage. Not to mention you get to meet the outside curator who's typically enrolled to parse through submissions, or the gallery owner, or what have you. And then the last community I want to talk about and also debunk is the art fair. Typically, art fairs are not for artists to go and introduce themselves to galleries. It's mostly for galleries to make sales and meet new clients. But there are two art fair opportunities which are fantastic for emerging and mid-career artists. One is Spring Break Art Show that happens here in New York, and recently they've also opened an edition in LA. What is beautiful and unique about that art fair is that it's curator-led. It's not galleries with booths. It's independent curators, museum curators, artist curators, all coming together and taking over a particular room or space, usually an alternative setting. So every room you go into is a totally different experience, and you can meet so many artists and so many curators just from a day visiting Spring Break. It's really exciting. Then there's the other art fair, which is an art fair that is artist-led. I know it's in Brooklyn and a few other cities. Definitely look it up. I believe it's really improved. It's well curated, and it's an opportunity for you as an artist to man your own booth. I know artists that have also partnered with a friend or two. That's possible. And that's why they call it the other art fair, because it's not another entity like a third party, like a gallery. It's the artists themselves manning their own booth. And there you are, you're having direct contact, with gallery owners, curators, other artists, critics, all these art professionals that go through there and are dying to meet you. I thought of Erica Renee to close out that particular section because she had taken a hiatus, which we'll read about in a second also. And then I offered her a solo show as part of that 5th anniversary exhibition that we had. And that was also her first solo show in a number of years. When she had left the art world, she was an emerging artist. She came back, she was more in the mid-career circuit, but really had to make up for lost time in a way and sort of reinvent herself. So here's Erica explaining or giving you all some advice and explaining her perspective. I was 42 when I decided to re-enter the art world after a near 9-year hiatus. The challenge was to figure out how. Art residencies proved to be the right move, where I was able to forge connections with fellow artists, curators, and galleries. All right, so going back to Zach's point as well about the amazing resource of the art residency. We all go through there. We all meet, a lot of us meet you there. All right, so then she says some very kind words about me, and then she moves on and says, now at 56, I'm in a good place. I'm represented by a New York City gallery and have an active show schedule. Who knew? If I allow the nagging voices swirling around in the universe to fill me with doubt, then I lose. Black equals check. Woman equals check. Much older than 30, check. I think of these qualities as enhancements of my artwork, not as defining factors. This really speaks to and ties into what I started the presentation with, which was a lot of what we view as challenges or disadvantages of being older artists or older art professionals, mid-careers, mid-career talents can actually be strengths, right? And Erica expresses that beautifully. And her story is so inspiring and I hope so empowering as well. I'm going to share some more feedback from her after this next section. Online communities, so much potential. As I mentioned earlier, I've been a pretty avid social media user for a number of years. I actually joined Twitter first in 2019 when I was kicking off my first curatorial project. It was a roving, I called it the G-Train Salon, and it was a roving curatorial artist salon. And we went to a lot of different spaces, and at each space, the artists would speak about their work. It was always solo exhibitions. Since 2009, I've met so many art advisors, other curators, lots of artists on Twitter. So it's definitely my number one recommendation. But in general, you have to pick the 1 or 2 social media outlets that work for you, that speak to you, that you want to invest some time in. Don't try to do them all. If you're not on Facebook, I probably wouldn't start now. It is Facebook does offer some support systems that I think are really valuable for artists. There's an artist opportunities page, which is fantastic. That was started by Melissa Stager. And artists can ask all kinds of questions about materials, process, sales, shipping, anything under the sun, and get so much positive feedback and advice from their peers. Facebook's also great for announcements. And I actually do follow quite a few, and I'm friends with quite a few artists on Facebook and other curators and gallery owners over the years. So I don't mean to poo-poo it. If you're on it, I would definitely have it be part of your social media strategy. But I would recommend Twitter, even if you're not as involved, but just to stay on the pulse, kind of follow the dialogue. Twitter really ties in a lot of societal and contextual themes and current affairs with the art world. So you really have a good sense of hot topics, hot button issues, social justice, everything under the sun. And it can be very friendly. You know, you can follow curators that you admire, other artists you admire, instead of having to go and introduce someone, right, in IRL, in real life, in real space. You can just follow them, you can comment, you can engage, and your voice is just as important and recognized, and you're doing it in your own way. Instagram, I also think, is very vital. I do feel like it's the new business card. I feel like when I go out for the few events I've been out for recently, or even right before the pandemic, people weren't really handing out business cards as much, and instead we were exchanging Instagram handles. Instagram just makes it so easy because it's on your phone and it's visual and there's just this immediate impact and there's like no pressure. So I would say to keep that updated, focus on the artwork, art you're seeing, art you're making, not as if you only have one platform, for example, don't make it so personal that people don't really get a sense of who you are as an artist. That would be another piece of advice. But nothing beats the online communities when you're thinking of networking, participating, being involved in this dialogue in a less intimidating, more accessible fashion. This is really the last community that I talk about, and it's that social community that's outside of the art world. Oftentimes I've found over the years, and I've learned this with artists too, that friends, family, work colleagues, parents that go to my that have kids that go to my friend's school. Little by little, some of them have become clients of mine because they were looking for an insider voice that they could trust, and they don't really feel comfortable going to galleries, don't really know what gallery to go to. Museums don't really feel like the place where they could meet new artists. So, definitely embrace that role to introduce people outside of the art world to the art world, to your work. Oftentimes they do want to go to events and they want to buy work to support and they want to spread the word. I know from art consulting, if you have a piece in someone's home, oftentimes that will spark conversation, but will also generate new leads because people that visit their home will see your work there, and it starts this whole conversation about you as this artist, and you're a living artist working today, contributing to the art world, and they want to be part of that story as well. Last message I want to say is just having these people outside of the art world and having these increasing demands on your time do provide a sense of perspective and appreciation as you're trying to strike this balance, right? I do it myself. As I said, I have 2 kids and I can't be as active as I used to be. So I really have to be selective about my projects and my platform. And so when I do have time to go see shows, go to studios, curate my own shows, meet with a new client, I appreciate it that much more and I'm that much more focused. I'm going to close with this quote from the artist Ria Hertz. Ria, again, another artist that wears many hats. I know a lot of you on this presentation know Ria personally and have worked with her from the Gowanus art world. She ran Trestle Art Gallery for a number of years and kept up her artistic practice during that entire time. So she was a real staple in the Brooklyn art world. And when we opened the gallery and we're developing our voice and meeting artists, she and Trestle Gallery were right there with us. And then I think things came full circle in 2019. She had a solo show at the Ground Floor Gallery, one of our last shows before we closed and before Ria moved to California, which is where she's originally from. She's also a single mom. And I know there are some questions out there about single parenthood, which I hope to address today or later. So her perspective was really invaluable to me. And I'm going to close with this quote from her. So one thing that has helped me is shifting my idea around what progress looks like. What it means to be productive has become slower, maybe, more bit by bit and less all at once. This is totally frustrating at times, LOL. The plus side might be I rarely overwork anything anymore. The scarcity of hours to myself makes my time so much more focused when I do have it. There's little time for self-doubt or effing around with the artist version of writer's block. I just get to work. My relationship to my studio time is very much absence makes the heart grow fonder. I can't wait to be there for as little or as much time as I can get. I couldn't say it better myself. Thank you for joining me. Goodbye and good luck. I believe it's now time for questions.
Krista, thank you so much. So much useful advice. We have a lot of questions in the Q&A box.
Okay, let me tackle this. Okay. Oh, that's a great question. So what is your advice on creative connections during the time of a pandemic when meeting isn't as organic virtually? It's funny, I've had the same concern because I've really had to focus on being more of a caretaker, especially in the past year and a half with remote school and all that. So I was also really feeling kind of out of the loop and, how do I balance this? And there's no time. One thing that has been positive is that I've actually been able to attend more events because of this virtual reality. So I've been listening to, when I can, artist talks, in California and artist talks in Boston, which normally, right, we couldn't do because we didn't live there. But that's actually been a positive. So definitely take advantage of those virtual events because now we don't have to be tied to a particular place to learn and connect in that way. Also, it does feel safer now. Obviously, it depends on where you are, but I have started venturing out to see shows again. And I cannot tell you what a good feeling that is. So I'm not doing like openings or anything like that yet, but definitely go out to shows. Artists are starting to come out and do talks or presentations at their shows. So if you can go out during an event, it still happens to be like more intimate just because people are watching their numbers and a lot of people aren't going out and a lot of this is by appointment. So it's actually slightly less intimidating now if you do feel safe going out. Just be selective with your energy and where you're going. And again, take advantage of these virtual opportunities as well, because that way you can connect by chat. You can then follow up on social media. That is really important. Follow up is everything. Next question. Would you advise an artist to stop working with a gallery if she thinks the gallery is not doing very much in publicity and sales of her work, or thinks the gallery doesn't have the right audience for her work? Yes, that might be time, but first I would communicate openly with the gallery if you have, and they don't seem to be receptive to you and these concerns, then it probably is time to start looking around. I know that Erica and I spoke about that in the past when she was thinking about joining a new gallery. So I just think communicate those concerns with that gallery, and if they're not receptive, I don't think you have to cut it off abruptly, but just start looking around, most definitely. Okay, I live in a small village in Europe. I'm trying to get involved and working hard to network, but it is very word of mouth. Do you have any suggestions for those who do not live in big cities? Yes. Is there an art scene there? Are there small galleries? Are there artist-run venues? Is there an arts council or anything along those lines? If not, could you and other artists could you start something? You might want to consider that. It doesn't have to be something big. It could be opening your studios to the community just to create an event and a platform where people feel welcome. I always say go local, support the small venues, and you could actually use this pandemic dynamic to your advantage as well by joining some of these virtual events like this one. Like you being here is such a big deal. And you can be here because this is virtual. And we are all sharing and we're all part of this from all over the country, all over the world. So keep doing more of this. Dig deep into the local community. See if you can start something if there's not something local there, not by yourself, right? But with other artists or creatives in your area. That can be really helpful to help generate some energy in a small town. Please explain the bullet point that stated it's not about representation right now. Yes, I think a lot of times artists, just based on my own experience, are thinking about starting a relationship with a gallery from day one with the goal of that gallery representing them. This depends on what stage you are in your career. If you don't have a lot of gallery or curatorial contacts or don't know a lot of artists represented by galleries, you don't want representation to be your goal or your first step. That's going to be daunting and that's not going to help your journey at this particular point. What you need to focus on is building relationships with one gallery or a select few galleries through open calls, your artists that have connections with galleries, group exhibitions. You need to just be on the radar and start building these relationships. Because if you do want representation in the future, that's how it starts. It starts small with the building blocks and through these relationships. If you don't, I don't think you definitely need representation in a lot of cases. If you have relationships with different galleries, those can also sustain you. So it also doesn't have to be going for one gallery for representation. It is really helpful, I would say equally as helpful and supportive and nurturing to your career to have a few key relationships with different galleries. And some artists actually prefer that. Representation is not the end all be all for a lot of artists right now, at least not exclusive representation. A lot of artists these days want that freedom to show in different spaces, sell to different clientele, have relationships and ties with artists from different cities, etc. That's what I meant by that. Who should you follow in order to follow the correct dialogue on Twitter? Oh, that's a good question. Erica Renee, the artist I mentioned, talked about following people who you may not know, but who you admire. I think that's a good place to start. Galleries you admire, curators you admire. There is a good possibility, other artists, of course, there's a good possibility there on Twitter. I would also suggest the arts writers and the journalists. They really keep us on the pulse and really have us think twice about issues within the art world, issues within broader communities, society. I love following Hrag. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, excuse me, but the editor of Hyperallergic, which a lot of you know is like the premier contemporary art magazine or website. He's great to follow. I also follow quite a few artists that I've just met over the years in the online sphere, some of whom I've worked with, some I haven't, but I love keeping up with them and they're fun on Twitter. I would follow organizations that provide opportunities for artists like Shishama, Smack Melon, which Zach also talked about. Smack Melon actually, they cater to the mid-career artists. They only show mid-career artists. That's their niche. Shishama is excellent because they have so many opportunities to submit proposals and they have so much access to space. So whether you're a curator or an artist or somewhere in between, Shishama probably has some opportunity for you, and they have a great name and they're great to work with. So follow galleries you're interested in, artists that you feel a kindred spirit with or are just interested in, journalists and writers that write for publications that you admire. A lot of them are really quite fun on Twitter and happy to engage. Do you have advice on using Instagram as a business card? Do you recommend curating your feed to be mostly a showcase of your own work? Yes, you definitely want, because what happens is someone tells us about you, or you say, oh yeah, I'm working on this new series, I'd love for you to check it out. And then it's like, okay, great. Before I go to your website, before a lot of people go to your website these days, they go to your Instagram feed, for better or for worse. It's just easier. And so what you want to see is your artwork, or references, shots from the studio, just you, and you as an artist and your persona and what you're interested in. We want to know more about you, what you're making, what you're thinking about. That's not to say it doesn't have to have any family members, but don't have it skew so much towards that we don't have a sense of who you are as an artist. Also, connecting and being part of these conversations is sometimes taking the lens off you and showing how you fit into the broader picture. So when you go to see an art show, post about it and talk about why you went to see that show, why it's interesting. People will comment, will engage. When you see other artists or other curators posting about their shows or another show that's interesting, comment, write about it, go see it, say, oh yeah, I agree with that. That was a great show. Here's what I checked out. I highly recommend this show. Here's why. Those are all really easy, non-awkward ways to literally be part of the conversation and to keep up.
Thank you so much, Krista. Very, very useful advice once again.